Hey guys, how's it going? Just wanted to make a quick video explaining what construction estimating is. I remember when I first started in the industry, there weren't a ton of resources that went just in the really bare basics, and so I just wanted to create this. This is a kind of a resource if you're a construction management student, construction engineering student, or if you're just kind of new to the industry. So we'll get started. Imagine with me, if you will, your friend is selling his house and has offered to sell it to you for a really good deal, less than market value, and says that you can rent the house and make a really good return. Well, hey, that sounds awesome. You're gonna buy it for less than what he could sell it for. You're gonna make a return because you're gonna rent it. You talk to your friends and family, and they're kind of on board, and that just sounds awesome. Except you're kind of missing a key piece of information. You don't really know what any of the pricing is. You don't know how much the house is going to cost. You don't know how much you're going to rent the house for. You don't know any of the legal requirements if you can even rent the house out. And so there's quite a bit missing from this picture. And this is pretty, this highlights, I guess, the importance behind construction estimating. So in very basic terms, a construction estimate is a valuation of a construction project. Um, it helps the owner of a project understand what the project is going to cost. It also helps the contractor understand, um, you know, how much they're investing and how much of a return they're hopefully going to make on that investment. Um, Kind of a byproduct of estimating is that it helps you understand risks, challenges, and special conditions, pretty much anything that needs to happen to the construction project before construction even begins. And so construction estimating is seen as a risk mitigation measure, and hopefully that's something you're able to do. Um, so as you build an estimate, you'll kind of have the same format. Now, estimating can look different depending on the contract type, what's called the delivery method, and I'll make a video on that one later. But in very basic terms, every estimate will have a set of general conditions, which is the cost of your supervision, the cost of your what's called overhead, so the office that's supporting the construction project, as well as cars, vehicles, things like that. Um, you'll have the body of the estimate, which are your construction costs. That's where the majority of your cost is going to lie. So the actual construction is kind of the main part of your estimate. At the end of that, you'll have markups, and so that includes, taxes. You'll probably want to charge a fee so that you can build the project and then make a little bit of a return to, have your construction company, the business, make a profit. And at the very end will be the total cost of the construction project. Um, Sometimes when you turn in an estimate to an owner, they want to see every little detail. They'll want to see a variation of that, or sometimes you just give them just a total cost with no other information. So if you're an estimator, there's generally a slight variation in how you build an estimate depending on the type of project you're building, the type of contract you're building, the type of delivery method you're building. But in very basic terms, it'll almost always kind of look like this format. So step one, this is a little bit backwards from the previous slide, but step one is you're going to actually start with your construction costs. As I mentioned before, that's the body of your estimate. That's where the majority of your cost is. And that'll help determine and help you figure out what steps two and three will look like. So step one, you're going to figure out just the raw or the net cost of construction. Once you understand what the net cost of construction is, step two is general conditions. So what's it going to look like to supervise the construction project? Do you need just one superintendent or do you need six? Do you need relocation fees? Do you need trailers? Can you manage everything from an office? Things like that are important to consider, and you really need to understand the construction first before you can start putting the general conditions together. And then finally, at the end, you'll put together your markups and your final price. This should be the easiest part of your estimate. It's also the most stressful because you have to start figuring out what your taxes look like. You have to start figuring out your fee, your what's called a contingency. So just kind of a general fund in case something doesn't go quite your way. There's other markups to consider, and they may change project to project. And then you'll put your final price together. You'll add everything up. It'll be your final number. That'll be what you review with hopefully another team member or your supervisor, and then turn it into the owner. So now let's get a little bit more detailed on how to build the estimate. So we're going to break this down into 7 steps. Step one simply is receiving the contract documents. As you're building an estimate, hopefully you'll receive a set of drawings, a set of specifications. You won't always get those, but hopefully you get them more often than not. And then you'll get owner-provided documents. If you're a general contractor working for an owner, you'll have quite a bit of information to sift through. You'll have lots and lots of requirements to look through. You'll have what are called schedules of values to consider. You'll have requests for proposals to consider. You'll have a lot of information to digest. It could take a couple of days, and it's all very important information. If you're a subcontractor, you'll receive a little bit less from the general contractor. You'll kind of receive just what you need. There might have to be a little bit more coordination between you and the general contractor, and that's okay. They'll do their best to get you the information that they think you need. And as the subcontractor, it's your responsibility as the specialist to tell them what you need. Now, the second step, if you're building an estimate, is after you receive the contract documents, you'll want to send out the information that you need to your subcontractors. And sometimes, if you're a subcontractor, you'll have your own subcontractors that you need to reach out to. And so the general contractor is competing against other general contractors. Subcontractors are generally competing against other subcontractors as well. And so as you send out your documents to your subcontractors, you'll want to be sure to include the bid date for when they turn their bids in. Hopefully that's a couple of days before your bid is due. Contact info, non-disclosure agreements, which we can go into later, and any other relevant information. Location is another one. Common applications that are used for sending out requests for proposals are Building Connected and SmartBid. Your company may use a different program or may simply just email or mail all this information, and that's just fine. I mentioned this before, but just make sure that to give yourself enough time to receive bids back from subcontractors, have time to be able to review them and level them, and go back to them if you have to. And so generally that looks like a couple of days. For a really big job, it could be a couple of weeks. Now, once you've sent out your information to your subcontractors, you have a good understanding of what the project looks like. At this point, you'll start your takeoff. Now, depending on the project, depending on a lot of variables, you may not be able to complete an entire takeoff for the entire project. If you're able to, great, that's awesome. You want to get as much information as you can. However, sometimes it's just not possible. If you must, what items that are considered, items that are considered critical items are ones that you want to take off. And so as a general contractor, that typically means excavation, concrete, maybe some higher architectural finishes such as roofing, flooring, and any other specialty items. If you're building, for example, a data center, you'll want to have a good understanding of your electrical components. And as you're building your estimate, it's important to consider you want to start from the ground up, or in other words, you want to do your takeoff as if you're a contractor building that project. And so you don't want to start from the roof down to the foundation because that's not how the project will get built. You'll want to start from the foundation to the roof. And that'll help you get a sense of the challenges that the construction crews will face as they build the project in real life, and it'll help you identify risk. And this is kind of along those same lines, but as you're building your takeoff, it's important to consider challenges. Are there logistics challenges? Do you need a crane? Are there overhead power lines around that'll prohibit you from using cranes or other equipment? Are there construction challenges? Maybe you are building a suspended concrete slab and there's a cantilever slab and it's 30 feet off the ground. That's going to cause some unique challenges. Anything that you think will be detrimental. It also gives you an opportunity to look for specific items and discuss them with your team, discuss them with your boss. The more questions you can ask as a young professional, the more it'll help you understand just the construction process and see things that other people think. Once you've done your takeoff, you'll what's called export your quantities. 9 times out of 10, it looks like an Excel sheet. That 1 time out of 10, unfortunately, it's writing things on a piece of paper. I highly recommend exporting quantities into Excel if you're able to. And then you'll organize them. So sometimes that is following CSI master format, where Division 3 is concrete, Division 5 is metals, um, Division 33 is utilities, and it gives you a good just flow for how these items are supposed to look and how to be organized. If you're building a highway, you'll probably build that jurisdiction's own requirements, or sometimes cities will have their own requirements as well for roadway projects. But whatever it looks like, you want to make sure that your items are well organized and they're easy to look through and they're easy to identify. At that point, you'll assign the quantities that you've taken off to your items, and then you'll assign waste factors. So concrete, if you are doing a takeoff on concrete and you have 100 cubic yards, you won't actually purchase 100 cubic yards from the concrete supplier. You'll more than likely purchase around 110 because concrete usually has about a 10% waste factor. Other items such as lumber, roofing, drywall, mechanical, I know has other waste factors. These are important to consider, and it's also important to consider as you are comparing your quantities to your subcontractor quantities when you get their bids back. From then, you'll assign unit rates to your quantities. Hopefully the company you work for has some sort of cost history. You can look at previous bids from similar projects, historical costs. If you don't have access to any of that, it's really not encouraged, but you can use a third-party database. The two most common that I've seen are programs called RSMeans and Compass International if you're working on international projects. So once you've got the body of your estimate built and put together, you understand, hopefully, the construction required to build the project. Um, as you've been working on that, now you have kind of an idea of what it'll look like to manage the project. I would say that building the general conditions is probably one of the more difficult tasks when it comes to estimating. And if you're not great at it now, that's okay. You'll get better with time. This is one of those things that really comes with field experience, with estimating experience. The more time you have in the industry, the better you'll get at this. But this is one that's really hard to just kind of calculate on your own. And so it may not be a bad idea to, pull a supervisor aside or a coworker aside or a superintendent or a project manager aside and really get an idea of what it'll look like to manage the project. But if you're a general contractor, chances are you'll probably need a project manager. You may need a superintendent. You may need a field engineer, and you may also need other people assigned to the project as well. A BIM specialist, a quality specialist, perhaps a job site accountant, whatever that might look like. And as you put those people in, you'll want to be sure to also include what's called burden. And so burden, we'll go into that with another video, but burden is essentially costs on top of salary. And so if you're a project manager, or if you have a project manager and they're making a salary of $110,000 a year, you'll have to include more than $110,000 a year because as the GC, you're paying for taxes and insurance and health benefits and other benefits to that project manager. Same with the superintendent, same with the field engineer. And so if you don't know how to calculate that, hopefully your company has some sort of historical on what burden should look like. Outside of just management and salaries, you also need to look at administrative resources. So anybody in the main office of your company that has to help with the project. And so, maybe you have somebody in the office helping with pay applications. Maybe you'll have a little bit of pre-construction involved. Whatever that might look like, it's always good to work it out with the project team. You'll also have other general requirements. A lot of this comes down to what are called consumable materials. So if you're providing tools for the project, you'll have to include a price for those. If you're including on-site security, security cameras, if you're providing a trailer, other items, travel, lodging. Sometimes you'll have people that want to visit the site. You need to be sure to budget for that in your general conditions. All right. Now that you've got the body of your now that you've got the body of your estimate put together, you've got your general conditions put together. Now it's time to put your markups and your fees together. Now this hopefully should be really easy. These are really just percentages of the construction project. Taxes, you don't always see municipal taxes, but sometimes you do. You should always look out for those. But you will see state and federal taxes depending on the project. More often than not, it's just state taxes. Sometimes you'll have insurance required, and that may be a requirement from the owner. It may be a requirement for your company. It's generally a good idea to have insurance. We may make a video on that later. Really common insurance that you'll see is what's called uh, BR and GL, builder's risk and general liability insurance. The owner may require a bond, which is kind of a type of financial insurance. We'll go into that one later. Your fee is extremely important. That's the percentage of the project that your company is going to make a return. And so that's money that the owner is spending that you get to put in your pocket. And then the last one that you may look at is called contingency. Contingency is just kind of a general fee in case something goes wrong that the owner doesn't want to pay for on top of the contract. And so generally you're allowed to include a contingency. It's rare that you see contingency more than 6%. That's kind of high. Sometimes it's a little bit lower. It really just depends on the project. Now, the last step you're going to do in your estimate is to review it. So generally what I like to do is I like to pull a coworker aside and just kind of look everything over, kind of do a mock review with my supervisor, as if my coworker is my supervisor, and get a good idea of questions I'll be asked, if there's any holes in my estimate, if there's something I didn't consider. It's always good to double, triple, and quadruple check as much as you possibly can. And that goes down to quantities, that goes down to formulas and calculations. If you had multiple subcontractor bids to choose from, you may have to explain why you chose that subcontractor. And that's good. These are all items that'll help you in the future. And so if it feels like it's kind of personal, the questions they're asking you, I promise you it's probably not. It's just the company's taking a risk and they want to make sure that they're putting money into a good investment. Once you've got a good idea of what your costs look like and you feel comfortable with your costs, then you'll put your bid proposal together. And that's generally provided by the owner, what they want to see, how they want to see their pricing. There's always, if your legal department requires certain documents to include, if your manager includes certain documents to include, you'll put those in as well. Generally, you'll want to put together an assumptions and clarifications sheet. So, architects, engineers, very, very smart people. It's impossible for them to capture every single little thing in the projects that they design. And sometimes you have to make assumptions. Sometimes you have to make clarifications, and so you'll put those in. Another item that you'll want to see and include is called exclusions. And so if there's a type of work that you don't want to perform, or that you believe that the owner knows that you're not performing, but it's not written anywhere, that's where you would write it. And then the last step is to submit. And that's it. Thank you for watching this video. That was very high level, and we'll see you next time.